After a week away, it's good to be back here at St. John's Cathedral. 9 of us in the choir went up to Washington, D.C., 4 of our trebles, 4 of our adults, and myself. We went up to Washington, D.C. to participate in the RSCM residency there. We sang liturgies at Christ Church in Old Town, Alexandria, the Washington National Cathedral, National City Christian Church, and then ended the week with Eucharist last Sunday at Emmanuel on the Hill, the chapel at Virginia Theological Seminary. We learned a lot of music, learned a lot about singing, and had a lot of time to really bond and be together. So that's a great experience, a wonderful thing that we can share. The week before that, our own Charles Craven was doing a similar residency, an RSCM residency that was in Raleigh, North Carolina. So it's kind of that time of the summer where we can travel and do some of these extended experiences. But of course, it's really good to be back. This Sunday, looking forward to the liturgy that we have really a continuation in terms of the prayers, the collect of the day, as well as the lessons from last week. Last week we had a little bit of that. We talked about reprise of Pentecost with a lot of talk about the Spirit, and a little bit of that gets unpacked this week in our readings. But I think everything, the key to understanding all of what we have going on in the service is really in the psalm that starts off, "Teach me your way, O Lord," and this idea of following the pattern that has been given to us. And that's what Paul is talking about in his letter to the Romans, about following the pattern that has been given to us that gives us life, that instead of being mired down with the concerns of this life, that the way of flesh can be death, but the way of the Spirit brings life. Following the presence of the Spirit, the pattern set out by God for our lives, that is how we find true life. And then we hear that most especially in the gospel, where Jesus tells this parable about the wheat and the weeds growing up together. And we're not to be bogged down with the weeds in our life. The farm workers in the parable ask if they should try to pull out the weeds when the weed is still growing. And the landowner says, no, wait until everything is done. So sometimes we just have to abide in God's love and not worry so much about getting down, pardon the pun, into the weeds, but that we are to follow the pattern that Christ has given us and that the Spirit renews within our spirits. And that way we find life. Teach me your ways, O Lord, and I will follow them to the end. Speaking of following to the end, wanted to talk a little bit about what we do at the sequence. So the sequence hymn that we're going to sing this Sunday is "In Christ There Is No East Nor West." It may not fit the lectionary readings really tightly, but we have been, as we've said in these videos, been trying to sing some of the favorite St. John's hymns. This was a hymn that was suggested to us. It's a hymn that we sing several times a year anyway. It's a marvelous hymn. It is definitely something that comes from the African American tradition here in this country, and yet the roots of the melody really probably have an Irish antecedent. There was probably an Irish tune that was the basis that maybe some of those enslaved folks had heard and adapted and absorbed into their own tradition. But what we have is coming completely from that African American tradition. Similarly, the text by John Oxenham, who was a pseudonym for another writer, Dunkerley, is something that was written by a very white English dude from Birmingham, and yet it was consciously patterned after the spirituality and the poetic devices of African Americans in this country. So it's a real hodgepodge, but it's a wonderful way that we can celebrate our shared humanity, our shared cultural impulses, and of course that's exactly what the hymn is all about. So we hope that as you follow in the way of Christ's pattern and celebrate your connection with our community, that you will worship with us here at St. John's Cathedral this weekend.